Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. In today's episode, we're going to be reacting to an interview that Andrew Ross Sorkin from CNBC had with the CEO of GM, Mary Barra. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. This one might be a little ranty of an episode. It might be a little longer, okay? So just, be prepared for that. And the reason I say it might be a little ranty is because, I was listening to this interview with my fiance, and even she started to get heated and upset at I don't want to go into details about the interview until we watch it together, but the amount of sidestepping, not answering questions, BS lines, the spin that she put on everything, it was just unreal. She really should be in politics, not a CEO of GM. It's unreal. So that's what today's going to be about. But before we get into that, I want to touch on two topics. The first thing I want to talk about is a comment I had within one of my videos regarding some of the things I was saying about the Build Back Better plan, the EV tax credits, and things of that nature. Now, this comment tried to, criticize me by, saying, oh, I didn't hear you talk about Trump whenever he did this, X, Y, Z, whatever. Listen, first of all, to that individual, two things. One, this channel didn't exist whenever Trump was in office. Okay, so right out the gate, that's a horrible argument. Okay, like it makes no sense. This channel didn't exist. How could I react to something Trump did when this channel wasn't around? Okay, two, when it comes to debating your point or trying to convince another person of something, or even if you're just trying to make a logical point, it should never stem from, oh yeah, but he did this, or oh, she did that though. Like that's a childish way to converse or bring about your point of view. Okay, a point of view should come from nuance and logic and data. Okay, it shouldn't be yeah, but he did this. That's the way a child debates and argues, not an adult. So for that individual or anyone else out there, if you have something that you don't agree with that I'm saying, listen, I'm not always right. But you know what? You have the right to be wrong, and you have the right to your opinion as well. So if you don't agree with me, feel free to comment down below. Let me know what you think, but come at it from a, perspective of logic, decency, positivity, and then we can have an actual debate and conversation. I'm more than happy to. Now, with that said, I also want to touch on this idea of my political affiliation. I've said this numerous amount of times. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm me. I'm Nicholas. And hopefully you are you. Hopefully you are not somebody who just waves the flag of a certain color and that's it. Okay, I believe in having nuance and a diverse opinion on each topic, because to think that I can have a blank, just a blank affiliation with one party and all of a sudden I identify with everything they say, to me, that just seems very, again, childish. All right, that's somebody who hasn't had the time to sit down and really think their way through different issues and policies and different topics. And what do you really feel? What aligns with you and your morals? Okay, so I think those things are very important. Now, let's talk about one other topic that happened over the weekend. There's more. We're seeing more on Twitter. This time it seems this with Bernie and Elon Musk. This whole narrative about the wealthy need to pay their fair share. Listen, I get it. There is definitely the haves and have-nots. And it's very sad for the people who don't have, and I feel for people who are in poverty, right? I truly do. But let's be honest with ourselves. The people who are the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos of the world, the ones who are creating millions and millions of jobs, the ones who are innovating, the ones who are pushing the world further, the one who make it so that even somebody who's in poverty today lives a better life than anybody 100 years ago, those aren't the people who you should really be upset with. Now, if you really take umbrage with anybody and their wealth, we should be looking at our government and why there's so many politicians who are filthy rich. It makes no sense. It doesn't add up. The fact that they've never created any jobs, the fact that they've never actually contributed to society in a positive way, all it seems they do is split and divide us and pit us against each other. Those are the ones that you should take an issue with. And I'll point one other thing out. I hear a lot about wealth inequality, a gap between the wealthy and the middle class, right? This ever widening gap. But you know what else I see? There's a big part of this conversation no one talks about, and that's the gap in effort. Okay, Big gap in effort. How many of you, if you had $30 million, would you put all of it on the line to start up 2 brand new companies? Probably none of you. That's what Elon Musk did. He took a big risk after he worked very hard to make that 30 million, and he put it all in. Okay? Then he did the same thing again when he had about 100 million. He did the exact same thing. All right? He spent nights sleeping on the floor of Tesla. He barely sleeps. He lives in a $50,000 house off of Starbase in Texas. Okay? If you are not going to put in the same amount of effort and the same amount of risk as these individuals, you really don't have a right to criticize where they are with their wealth. Okay? It's one or the other. High risk, high reward. Okay? But there's also a downside. They took the risk. And then there's also the fact of effort. Effort matters. Okay? So let's not forget about the other side of the equation. It's not just about this gap between the haves and have-nots. Okay, with that said, rant over. Let's go ahead and start a new rant, and let's listen to Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, and Andrew Ross Sorkin with this interview. But before we do that, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and let's get into it.
Welcome back to DealBook. My next guest is Mary Barra, General Motors Chair and CEO. She's one of the most powerful female CEOs in the country. She leads the automaker, and she has served there for her whole entire adult life. Quite something. And she's now moving it towards an electric future. Over the summer, she announced the GM would increase spending on electric and autonomous vehicles by 30% to $35 billion through 2025, all in an effort towards a goal to overtake Tesla as the market leader in this increasingly competitive space. We want to welcome Mary Barra, who we should say is also going to be the incoming chair of the Business Roundtable. And it's great to have you back. We've now done this a bunch of times together, and I always enjoy these conversations. And in particular, at this moment, given what's happening at GM and what's happening in the car business and EVs, I want to talk about the strategy, but I just want to ask you about what's going on in terms of the valuations of all of these companies for just a moment, if you'd indulge me, because GM today is worth about $85 billion. Tesla is worth $1 trillion. Ford is worth about $79 billion. Lucid, which literally just has cars coming off the line for the first time, is worth $72 billion. Toyota, $288 billion. And Rivian, which just went public, is now at $66.5 billion, again, with not a lot of vehicles on the road. What is going on? Does this make any sense to you?
Before she gives her answer, listen, there is a crazy valuation that's being given to a lot of these companies. Now, I don't want to talk about what Rivian should or Lucid should or shouldn't be valued at. Or we have the Xpains, we got Neo, we have you heard here GM is at $85 billion, Ford, right? They're laggers compared to these startups. But to compare them to Tesla when it comes to market valuation, there's something that people always seem to forget. Okay, all these other companies are auto manufacturers. That's it. Tesla is a lot more than that. Tesla is an auto manufacturer. Tesla has Tesla Energy, right? An entire energy division of their company, right? Think of your utility company. Think that. They also have the largest supercharging network in the world. So think of all the gas stations out there. They have Tesla Insurance, right? Think Geico, Allstate. They have an entire insurance division within their company. And then they are arguably the leaders in real world AI, all right, with the likes of Andrej Karpathy, who, is considered to be the world's foremost renowned scientist, engineer when it comes to neural nets. So this is all part of the whole Tesla ecosystem. It's more than one business unit, whereas all these other companies are simply that one business unit. Now, sure, they are trying to get into other segments, but they haven't, and they're just in the very early stages, right? They're just now thinking about investing into these stages. And there's other things I haven't even talked about, right? I haven't talked about batteries yet, right? The 4680 battery is going to come out. Tesla's going to be building their own battery, and this is going to start soon, right? I'm not talking about things that are far out in the future. If we're going to talk about that, I could talk about Tesla Bot, right? Optimus, but I'm not. I'm talking about things that are happening now, right? These are real things, and that's what's built into the Tesla valuation. Now, when we look at all these other companies, well, they are far from anywhere near that. And so that is a big, distribution between the two.
Well, I think what it highlights to me is the huge opportunity. General Motors is so undervalued, and as we, start this wonderful period that we are now in, because we invested, over 3-4 years ago in electric vehicles with the Ultium platform, as the Hummer comes out yet this year, as the Lyric comes out early next year, and it's just a steady run. We'll have our own battery plant up and running next year. So I'm just excited to get all these vehicles out to leverage the men and women of General Motors and the manufacturing talent that we have. So I see it as huge opportunity for General Motors to capture significant more value.
So her response is that, when she sees all these valuations, she doesn't think they're too high, is pretty much what she's saying. What she's saying is it means that GM is extremely undervalued. Well, I hate to burst some bubbles for her, but let me tell you something. The people who are investing in NIO and Lucid and Rivian and Tesla, they will never be the people who invest in Ford and GM. They will never be those people. These are two different types of investor class, okay? These are the people who, choose to shop online versus going to brick and mortar. These are people who are using things like Robinhood versus your traditional brokerage firms, okay? Just the mindset is different. We're talking about the kids who are young, who, since they were 10 years old, they knew what a Tesla was, but they don't even remember what a Hummer was because the Hummer stopped being made in 2010, which is a great segue into what she said. She's talking about how, all of these new iterations of vehicles are going to come out for EVs, for GM. Listen, this is the part that I don't understand some of the decisions these CEOs make. They're going to come out with their first EV since the Chevy Bolt, which has been essentially discontinued because the battery fires. It'll come back, but for right now, it's discontinued. But they're going to have their first EV that they've made since the Chevy Bolt is going to be the Hummer. Who thought that was a good idea? So their thinking was, okay, this vehicle was so unpopular that in 2010 we stopped making it. Not just that, but the people who buy a Hummer are the people who are very similar to the diehards of F-150s, right? The ones who have, the 250s or the 350s. The people who buy Hummers are arguably the people who are going to be the last to transition into EVs. But GM said, no, that's the first one we're going to go with. I don't know who makes the decisions over there. And I'll make one last point to this. GM, if you were going to say, okay, it's very clear everyone's going down this EV path and that's the way of the future, and we want to invest into a company, into an OEM who is going to be the leader in EVs, right? And to try to give it an evaluation like a Lucid, a Rivian, a NIO, a Tesla. Well, GM would have been that company because of the Chevy Bolt. But nobody decided to invest in them. Nobody had confidence in GM. And so if nobody is confident in you then, why would they be confident in you in the future? Okay, you had a first mover advantage with the Chevy Bolt. It was really Tesla and GM. I'll give GM some credit with the Chevy Bolt. It was really just you two. Yet nobody's investing in you. Nobody's buying the Chevy Bolt. Tesla makes more vehicles in a quarter, I believe, in a month, I believe, than the Bolt's ever sold. So I don't know. There's a big issue here. So, full story, I do not think GM is extremely undervalued, like she said. Some of these companies are overvalued, we hear Andrew, he'll say in a second here that even Elon Musk has said that Tesla is overvalued. Guys, this was literally about a year and a half ago now. The stock was at like $400 a share pre-split when he said that. So I don't know why people keep saying this thing that he said almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, as if it applies today. We were in a whole different place. Shanghai was ramping up. The Model Y wasn't quite out yet. Right now, we have 2 new factories coming online. We've got a Cybertruck that hopefully comes soon. We're in a whole different place with full self-driving. We have insurance in Texas. Like, the world's a lot different now. Okay, Y's ramped up. It's good. Tesla 3 and Y will be the leaders in Europe soon, around the world. I mean, it's just a whole different place. So perspective matters.
But do you look at these valuations and say, this makes sense to me? Do you say, this makes no sense to me?
I don't look at it that way. I mean, I look at every competitor as somebody that I respect, and that, we have to be better, be faster, have vehicles that consumers want to have, solve the ownership equation. And so that's the way I look at it. And I would say, if anything, it motivates me to work even harder.
Okay, but when you say that there's this opportunity, part of what's happened here, from a stock market perspective, valuation of the company perspective, is everybody, I think, looks at Tesla and they say, look at this thing, $1 trillion. That's the opportunity set. And the question is whether that's really the opportunity set, or whether there is, dare I say, an overvaluation. Even Elon Musk has said he believes the company's overvalued. And so whether that's going to come down and you're going to get to the middle, that's the goal, or you think actually that is the opportunity ultimately.
She just refuses to answer this question. Okay, like, it's not that hard. Do you think these evaluations are overvalued or undervalued, or do you think they're right? It's not a hard question to answer. And I appreciate Andrew, pressing on her to answer this question. It's very simple.
I think when you have to look at the value creation that can happen, because it's not just electric vehicles, frankly, I think is even more of an opportunity is the fact that the vehicle is a software platform. And we started rolling out the electrical architecture to support that back in 2019. We just announced Ultifi that allows us to quickly update and roll out things to customers after they buy the vehicle. Think about it. Your vehicle can get better through ownership. So the software platform, and then the other aspect we have is autonomy,
right,
whether it's Super Cruise, Ultra Cruise, or Cruise. And so I look at those three areas and the TAMs associated with those, and I think we have a tremendous opportunity to grow. So whether, is it here, if it's here and here, is it here, it's way, way up there in my mind.
So it's way up there in her mind because of what they're going to do with software. So let's break that down real quick. Ultifi. For those of you who don't know, Ultifi is essentially the way that they're going to attempt to do over-the-air updates. And, which they have not done successfully. And yet a company like Tesla has been doing it, I think, since 2012, maybe even earlier. So, a decade ago. And if you look at Ultifi, it's almost comical because what they essentially want to do is have people pay a subscription for their software service to essentially get firmware updates. Things that your computer gets for free online. It's like getting new drivers for your printer, right? Like, it's just an update on the firmware that you have. And they're trying to, create a subscription business out of this, right? Something that Tesla just gives you for free because, well, they're firmware updates, Tesla doesn't look to monetize on, hey, we've added this new feature or we've improved XYZ. Here, do this update. They're not trying to monetize on that. But of course, someone like her, that's exactly what they think about.
Right now, GM, in terms of the electric vehicle market, you have about 9-10% of the market. Tesla has about 63% of the market. 5 years from now, if you succeed, but everybody else has their own success in this space, what does that pie chart look like?
Well, we have said, just like we're the leader today.
What? All right. Let's take a step back here. Andrew's question starts off by saying, you guys currently have an 8 to 10% market share, and we're talking about North America here. Tesla, meanwhile, has about 65% market share. Okay, I think those are the numbers he used, roughly. Her first statement is that they are the leaders. What? What is wrong with her? See, this is where, I get in trouble for making political comments because, I'm sorry, this is a Joe Biden moment. That's what this is. This is a pure Joe Biden moment.
If you set aside, with the distortion that's happening with the semi shortage, we have been the leader in the United States. We've been number 2 in China for many years. I think when you get to, wanting to get, excuse me, to, 50% all EVs, you have to win customers that they only drive one vehicle. They only own one vehicle. They depend on that vehicle every day. General Motors has brands that they trust. We have the highest loyalty rating. We have manufacturing plants that are ready to go. And so when I look at our ability to scale, to serve customers, I think we're incredibly well positioned, and we're not going to cede our leadership position to anyone.
I hate what she just said there. And I don't use too often. But the fact that she thinks that she can actually stop. So she said, we're not going to cede our position to anybody. Listen, at the end of the day, this is the way it works. And this is how it works for any good company. Let me correct myself there. The CEO, the board, they essentially work for their employees. They treat their employees as if their employees are their customers. Okay, as a result, the employees take great pride in their work because hopefully management, the board are treating them well because they treat them as if they're their customers. Now, the employees, the mass population of the company, will in turn give that same type of effort and appreciation to the actual customers. So that's one part of it. Then there's the technology aspect of it, okay? The technology has to be there and has to be something that is forward-looking. All those things have to come together in order for you not to cede your position as first place, second place, third place in anything you're doing. And then don't forget, you also have to be relevant, okay? Kodak was number one for a long time. Sony, the Walkman, was number one. Blockbuster was number one. Do you think these companies chose to cede their position? No. Innovation came, disrupted them, and they couldn't keep up. All right? People chose better places to work. Talent moved. You're not getting any talent at GM. The best talent goes to SpaceX and Tesla. After that, they'll go to companies like Apple, to Google, right? Other upstarts within Silicon Valley. The best talent, which software is what we're talking about here, because that's the talent you really need, will not be going to GM and will not be going to Ford. Mark my words. Okay, I work in the space. I know a lot of people who are always, looking for the next place to jump to, and none of them talk about Ford or GM. Promise you that.
One of the fun conversations we've had over the years is about self-driving cars. Yes. And who is in the lead and where everybody is. And for a long time, people thought that maybe Waymo, Google was at the top and Cruise was coming up there. And a lot of people thought for a long time that Tesla was actually going to be way behind because they weren't using LiDAR. They were just using cameras. It feels like things have changed. How do you see it right now?
When he says it feels like things have changed, what Ross is refusing to say is that it seems like Tesla is the leader now, right? The company that everybody said, oh, they're not using LiDAR, they're never going to get anywhere. Well, they've been able to make do with vision and get rid of LiDAR. They've been able to use vision to replace radars. That's the company he's talking about. They're the ones that are clearly in the lead. And it's not even a question, okay? Everybody else has a local maximum, and they don't realize that yet. That's a big thing that Elon and Andrej Karpathy, who's the head of essentially Tesla's AI division when it comes to full self-driving, they understood back in 2019, 2018, that with something like LiDAR, that they would reach a local maxima. And in order to, essentially your curve, I think for the camera, I have to go this way. So the curve would come up here and would slowly start to plateau. All right. So that's your local maxima where you could still get improvements, but they'd be so incremental that you essentially flatline. So that's when they decided, okay, we need to go away from what we're doing and we need to look more into the vision aspect of things. And then they brought labelers internally, right? And they started labeling, right? So those are the things that Tesla saw up front and, 3 years ago now, I guess. This is what everybody else is missing. This is what nobody else gets, is that they're hitting local maximas. They're not going to advance. Look at Waymo. Waymo's been doing this for a lot longer than Tesla has. Why aren't they everywhere yet? Why haven't they gotten out of Arizona?
Well, I see Cruz as being incredibly well positioned. I mean, Cruz literally in San Francisco is one permit away from being able to actually charge for rides in San Francisco. And it will be the only AV company working in a dense urban environment. And we know that's a tougher AV solution to solve. So I couldn't be more proud of what the Cruz team has accomplished. And I think one of the reasons they're, in the lead is because of the deep work that they're doing with General Motors. I mean, the deep integration of the technology, the fact that we're leveraging all the automotive know-how for the Origin that comes out in a year. So I'm super excited about it. But then we also have, Super Cruise and Ultra Cruise, right, which are a driver assist technology, but continuing to be more and more capable. Our technology has independently been assessed to be the best.
So I want to address two things. We'll address that last comment. Our technology has been independently assessed to be the best. First of all, I assure you, nobody at Tesla allowed whoever this independent party was to use FSD beta. Promise you, right? Tesla's not going to sit there and have some independent party try to assess their stuff. And up until recently, there were only 2,000 beta testers. Okay, so I doubt that they were allowed to have a independently tested organization come in and test it. So even if she's right here that Cruz was rated to be the best in the industry based on what they were able to test, okay, maybe that's true within those proximities, right? Based on the companies we could test, and for all we know is only two. It might have only been what Ford's doing with Blue Cruise and what Chevy's doing here with Cruise, or GM's doing with Cruise, right? So she didn't even talk about the parameters. And I hate this type of speak because she does a lot of things to make herself to like defend herself, like, no, I was right because of this. And she, plays games with her words. For instance, before she said that we will be the only working AV system in a dense populated area. Now, as we all know, we have Tesla FSD betas everywhere in the United States, from San Fran, which she said, again, is going to be the only AV system of dense population. But we have it in San Fran. We have it in Chicago, in Manhattan, in Portland, Rhode Island, Seattle, Florida. I mean, everywhere. Houston, right? There are testers everywhere in the country. But why is she able to get away with this phrase? Well, it's probably because she said we're going to be the only working, which means they're going to start charging people to ride in their test vehicles. And so I think that's how she does this wordplay in order to get away with saying the, in my opinion, lies that she gets to say. Because there's no other reason why Andrew wouldn't just straight out call her out on it. Either that or he's just being a soft reporter, which could very well be true as well. But to me, it always seems like she's playing these word games. Again, we're the best based on this independent study. Well, tell me about that independent study. If I was Andrew, right, that would be my first question. Well, tell me more about this independent study. Who was in it? Who all did they assess? Right? Like, I don't understand why reporters don't have these good follow-up questions. Like, they have their script, and they just stick to the outline they have there. But that is a very logical next question. Anybody in a normal conversation would go deeper in. This is why shows like the Joe Rogan Experience are so popular. Because Joe wouldn't just let somebody go by with a statement like that. He would say, well, what do you mean? Well, who was in that? Who was in that study? Right? These are the things that matter. Nuance, details, data. Something like this, even though it's about a 30-minute interview, it's not enough time to really dive into what she says and call her out on her lies.
And so I feel like we have a very robust plan as it relates to autonomy, coming at it with solving the super hard problem and then taking costs down, but also, continuing to increase. So I wouldn't trade our autonomy position with anyone.
So if I'll let you claim that you're in the lead, if you like.
Yes.
I just can't. Like, you hear Andrew here, I'll let you claim the lead in autonomous if you like. Like, that's just comical because he doesn't believe it. She just fed him all this line of BS, and even he's like, all right, I'll let you claim this lead. See, Andrew, if you feel that way, why don't you press her on what she's saying? I hate that. I just don't get that. Why don't reporters ask the questions? Follow up. You clearly didn't believe what she said, so ask her more questions. That's what reporters should be doing. Journalism seems to be lost. This is why I love YouTube. I love podcasters because they don't just let time or certain questions that they've pre-scripted dictate the way a conversation goes. They analyze and they go deeper and deeper and deeper. And when they need to, they pull up Google because we have the time. We have the truth. We have Google. We can look things up. We can see if you're lying. We can see if you're not. We can, understand more nuance. It just blows my mind. Even he doesn't believe it, as you can see here with him laughing and saying, okay, you can claim this.
I like.
Order them afterwards. Because I'm sure you study this.
I do, but the one thing in autonomous, I think you've got to look at who actually has vehicles on the road.
Great point. In autonomous, she said, you actually have to look at who has vehicles on the road. Nobody in the world has more autonomous vehicles on the road than Tesla. Tesla has over, 1 million vehicles now on the road with hardware 3 or above. Nobody has more. Nobody has more testers than Tesla does at this point. Nobody. Every single Tesla vehicle has all of the hardware needed for full self-driving, from the computers to the cameras. Even the vehicles that were made prior to this newest hardware iteration are now allowed to go in. And again, this isn't Tesla upcharging people, okay? They said, hey, you need updated cameras for full self-driving. So they're allowing people to come in about an hour, all their cameras will be swapped out free of charge to the new hardware. Okay, and think about this. Not only does Tesla have all that stuff in the vehicle, all that gear in the vehicles already that they sell, whether people use it or not, they all have it, no matter what. But Tesla has record automotive margins at 30%, 28% if you take away credits, including this hardware. These other auto manufacturers are not putting this hardware into all their vehicles. Okay, believe me, they're not wasting money on LiDAR and camera and sensors on all their vehicles if they're not going to be using it, if they're not going to pay for this extra service. Okay, this is the four-dimensional chess game that Elon's playing with everyone else who's just playing pickup sticks over here. That's all they're doing. They're playing pickup sticks, trying to be a Me Too company.
I mean, I don't know if you saw the video just a week ago. Kyle took the first ride. No one. I mean, we're seeing, how people on the street respond. It's pretty cool. So I think in a space where there's not, complete transparency of who's really how far, I look at what we're doing, and I think that's what legitimately puts us in the lead.
Right.
Again, just stupid comments from Miss Mary Barra. She just said, she said, let me quote this. In a field talking about autonomous driving where there's not a lot of transparency, in other words, we don't know what everybody's doing, right? We don't know how they're doing things, right? There's a lot of companies out there. But she, in that, without all that transparency, she looks at what they're doing, what Cruz is doing, and that legitimately puts them in the lead because of what she sees. This woman, she's not an engineer. She can barely say autonomous. She doesn't understand how these things work. She's the one. She's looking at it. I would love to know what she's looking at. I would love to know. What programming language does she know how to code in? Because what are you seeing? Are you talking about what you see on your little LCD screen? And we're clearly in the lead. Has she ever been in a Tesla? Has she ever been in a Ford Cruise? Has she ever ridden Waymo? You can't just this is insane. Listen to this again. She is claiming that because of what she has seen, that makes them the legitimate leader. Because of you are the most biased person. I've had this conversation before with her in her interviews. You are the most biased person. You cannot, even Andrew's sitting here in front of you and he's laughing saying you can claim you're in the lead. And you're saying that you're legitimately in the lead because of what you've seen with your technology. This is ridiculous. Listen to this again.
In a space where there's not, complete transparency of who's really how far, I look at what we're doing, and I think that's what legitimately puts us in the lead.
Right.
I don't even have a word. I just had a whole bunch of words for that. That makes no sense to me. She's not even offering engineering reasons or software reasons or anything. She can't even explain how it works. Okay, can she explain to me, how it works from the LiDAR and the cameras and the sensors? How do they all come together to form a decision, a decision on what the vehicle should do? How does it have the memory built inside of it so that if I'm at a stop sign, but there is a, no left turn sign in the back, does the vehicle remember that? Does the computer remember that? How does the bandwidth work between the chipsets? And she doesn't understand any of this because to say something like that without the actual engineering details behind it is pointless. It renders your statement discreditable or lacks credibility. It's just, I can't. Let's continue.
How concerned are you, though, that there will be an accident? You've seen this, by the way. The attention on when there's an accident with Tesla, there is so much attention on the autopilot feature and whether it's being mismarketed. I know you're not doing that, but how concerned are you about that? And we've talked, and I think I probably asked you this question before over the years. Politically, when do you think it'll be palatable to the country? Right now we have about 30,000, 35,000 deaths on the road every year. But if I told you that number came down to even 1,000, but it's the robot, it's the computer that creates that accident, that creates that death, will the public accept that?
Well, I think when you look at how you can impact safety, right now we know of the deaths that you talk about just in the U.S. alone, over 90% of them are caused by human error. And autonomous vehicles don't drive impaired. They follow all of the traffic lines. They can, I think, process information with all the cameras and the compute power. They can process information faster. And so I think it's ultimately safer. And then when you take, General Motors' knowledge of safety and how to put vehicles on the road and how to demonstrate that, I think that's going to be a compelling case.
Right.
So she didn't really answer the question. But it's a great question that Andrew brings up. And I will say the thing she did say, was the words that did come out of her mouth, I do agree with. So first of all, this is going to be the big, moral dilemma that we're going to be rendered with as humans as autonomy gets better. Because it's not going to be one of those things where, boom, just like that, all of a sudden autonomy works and it's perfect and nobody ever dies in another car crash. The truth is, right now, United States alone, about 35,000 people die every single year. Even more get injured, right, severely. And so the question becomes, if, to Andrew's point, if we can get down to only 1,000 people dying a year, however, every one of those 1,000 deaths does not happen from a human driver, yet it happens from the autonomous vehicle. So the AI, the robot itself is what makes a mistake and kills people. As humans, are we going to be okay with that? Okay, because think about it. We're going to have 35,000 deaths versus 1,000. The difference, these 35,000 caused by humans, this 1,000 caused by a autonomous robot. It's going to be something that we're going to grapple with because morally and logically, we should say, yes, that's a no-brainer. We'll go for the 1,000. However, you're going to have a lot of people out there who are going to, just scream and blast and throw hate towards the companies who have that technology and for any of those vehicles that do cause that death. And nobody's going to be able to count the amount of lives that were saved. That's going to be the hard thing, right? Especially when we're in this, intermediate space where people are still driving, but there's also this autonomous technology, right? We're never going to be able to count the amount of lives that were saved based on autonomy. Okay, that's not a metric that we can get, right? That's the negative space that you don't see. But that's the most impactful space, arguably, right? That's the most impactful statistic. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest hurdle for these things. That's why you see Tesla keeping stats on how many accidents per miles driven compared to, the industry average, and depending on what level of the autonomous software you're using, whether it's auto steer, autopilot, FSD, etc. So that is a big, that's going to be I think the biggest thing that we have to make a decision on in this next decade. Now, what Mara said, or Mary, every episode I do this when we're talking about her. I always want to say Mara. I feel like that should be her name, Mara Barra. It sounds better than Mary Barra. Anyways, hopefully her marketing team can talk to her about that and take my opinion. Not that anyone cares. Anyways, what she said was that fundamentally, the autonomous vehicles don't get inebriated. They don't, I don't really agree with it. She said they don't make mistakes when it comes to traffic lines or traffic signs. It can still make a mistake, right? It's inevitable. Nothing's perfect, and especially when it's, human made. But her point is that, they can process more information quicker, right? They have, a whole spectrum of cameras all over the vehicle, whereas we just have two on a gimbal, our neck, and we're sitting there trying to see everything. We're looking at rear view mirrors, we're looking at side mirrors, and you look at what's in front of us, right? We're constantly doing all these things, whereas a vehicle has cameras all around. And so the fundamental limit with humans is our input and our processing power. Well, cameras and computers don't have those limitations. Okay, it's a fact. I mean, if I had a calculator here and I went to put in, 252 times 5 million, right? The calculator's going to do that in a second like that. You know what was the limiting factor on that? Was me with my meat sticks typing in the equation, right? I'm the limiting factor. And so if we can take out the limiting factor, aka the human being, it's just going to be better. It's going to be faster. And so that is a fact. I do agree with her on that. So, she finally said something I agree with. So, hey, I think we found common ground. Let's leave it at that.
Policy question for you, Washington question for you, in particular, incentives, tax incentives for EVs. As you know, you have become now the beneficiary to some degree of this latest bill, in that there will be a bigger tax incentive for your vehicles because you have union labor than there will be for other vehicle makers, including the likes of Tesla and Toyota. Is that fair?
This is where we're going to disagree real quick. So that was short and sweet as far as us agreeing and seeing eye to eye. This is not fair. Okay, first of all, when it comes to this whole EV tax credit, let me just say, maybe a year and a half ago, I would have said we need this. In 2021, almost 2022, when EVs, just about every vehicle commercial I see on the television, especially during any NFL games, they're all EV commercials now. Okay, everybody's buying EVs. We can't make enough EVs in the world fast enough. We don't need this tax credit anymore. We don't need to incentivize people anymore, right? That the natural incentive, the want for this, it's already there. So we'll start off with that. However, if there is going to be a tax credit, it should be the same amount across the board. If a tax-paying citizen of the United States buys an electric vehicle, that tax-paying citizen should get the full tax credit no matter what it is. It shouldn't matter if I buy from this company or if I buy from that company. It should be irrelevant. A vehicle made in the United States should be given, that's made in the United States, the taxpayer should be given the full credit. Okay, at the end of the day, this is our tax money. Okay, so the government shouldn't be making decisions on which companies to discriminate against based on certain things like labor unions. Right? That's my point of view. Again, my point of view is we don't need this tax credit anymore. All right? Demand's there. However, if you're going to give it, it should be the same across the board. All right? We don't need to advantage one company over another. It makes no sense. Why? Explain to me. Why?
Well, I think the new legislation that's coming, I think what's really important to do is to level the playing field from the fact that the early movers were penalized. I mean, we've already used our 200,000 credits, so people who are just now rolling out an EV, they have a $7,500 advantage.
This is why she should be a politician. So listen to this. So early on, there's a tax credit for $7,500 for the first 200,000 electric vehicles that you made, right? This has been around for a long time. And so, as mentioned before, the first movers were Tesla and GM. GM with the Chevy Bolt, Tesla with their vehicles. And so after your first 200,000 vehicles, that $7,500 credit went away, right? Because you had, that was your bucket. You got $7,500 per vehicle for the first 200,000. Now, all these other automakers who are starting to roll out EVs, well, they haven't used that yet. And so her point is that she thinks that this tax credit is fair because we need a level playing field because, well, these other companies have already used their tax credit. So in this instance, she's saying, yes, we should have a level playing field. But now listen to this next part where all of a sudden a level playing field doesn't matter.
I mean, I think when I look at, the trained workforce and wanting to have jobs in this country and good paying jobs, I think, the bill is set up to incentivize what the country is looking to build is a strong middle class.
So I'll make it more complicated. It appears by my math that on average, Tesla employees who are non-unionized appears on an hourly basis may be making more money than unionized workers, for example, at GM.
So first of all, this whole notion of she's all for this union tax credit because what we're looking to do in this country is build good paying jobs to help build a strong middle class. First of all, listen, I don't understand why everyone's always trying to build a strong middle class. Like, why don't we try to build a strong upper middle class, right? Why are we settling for average for people? Like, who's to say that the bell curve has to be perfectly with the same standard deviations on either side? Like, why can't we skew that bell curve over? Like, that makes no sense to me. But anyways, that's a whole other topic. But then we see here then we hear her say that we need to have more better paying jobs, good working jobs for American. Listen, the fact that you need a union at GM, in order to provide good paying jobs with good benefits, you have to have a union to do that? That says a lot about GM. Tesla doesn't seem to need a union for that. Toyota doesn't seem to need a union for that. Honda doesn't seem to need a union for that. Yet Ford does, Stellantis does, GM does. That says more about you as a company. And then Andrew Ross Sorkin here hits her with, a statement I've been saying over and over and over. Tesla employees have better working conditions and make more money than the OEMs without unions. Imagine how much the union workers would make if they didn't have a union in the middle taking a cut of the pay. And not to mention, this is the same union that has 16 people with charges right now for stealing money from the union. And this isn't the first time. This has happened over and over again. This union that we're trying to give all this tax money to for all these credits, it's ridiculous. They are literally being charged for fraud. Not one, not two. It's not one random bad actor. There's over 16 of them now. That's who we're defending. This is absurd.
You know, I'd have to see the information because it's not just the wage per hour, it's the benefits, it's the health care. There's pretty robust. My last look at that was not the case. But again, there's not, perfect transparent information. But what I would say is I'm incredibly proud of our workforce, our represented workforce, work hand in hand with the UAW.
But you appreciate that it does disadvantage the other automakers.
I think that, again, everyone has that option to do that. I mean, people have taken different positions. What I can say is we feel working with the UAW together, we've made great strides in safety, in quality, in training. I mean, if you think about one of the other things that has to happen is a robust workforce that knows how to build electric vehicles. We work in partnership with training with our unions.
So her cop out for this was, well, last time I saw the numbers, that wasn't the case. Well, when was the last time you saw the numbers? Before Tesla was around as a company, right? And then she goes in to talk about, you have to take into account also the benefits and all this stuff. Listen, Tesla employees get stock options. You know what that means? That means most of them have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in value just on bonuses from stock options. The value of their net worth has gone up just because Tesla stock has gone up so much because Tesla has executed amazingly year over year. Okay, if you're part of the UAW, you don't get those same benefits. Not to mention, here's the other thing that I think this would be more fair. Let's say that you want to keep this union tax credit in there, but let's put the decision on the people, the workers, the employees. Let's let them make the decision. Because at the end of the day, it's their tax dollars. It's our tax dollars, not the government's. It's ours. We, the people. So what I'm saying here is that if a company such as Tesla, such as Toyota or Honda, if they said to their employees, you can choose to unionize or not. Well, if the people of the employees say, no, we do not want to unionize, then they should still be allowed to get that union tax credit. Because the people who pay the taxes have made their decision. And that is, by the way, what has happened in California repeatedly over and over. Tesla employees have chosen not to unionize. What does that tell you? That tells you a lot of things. Okay, now everybody's be like, it's because the boogeyman Elon Musk is going to, incentivize them not to unionize. Give me a break. Okay, like they don't want to unionize because then they lose stock options. And they know those stock options make them a lot of money. So if a company has actively had this vote and the employees who pay their taxes have said no thank you to being unionized, that company should be able to have this tax credit. I think that's fair. That seems rational to me.
Let me read you what Elon Musk said about this, though, because you probably have read this. He wrote, this is written by Ford and UAW lobbyists as they make their electric car in Mexico. Not obvious how this serves American taxpayers.
Again, I think that it clearly incentivizes to be in this country, because remember, there's a component of built in the United States, and then buy jobs that are good paying jobs. So I think that, how the legislation turns out, I mean, that's not a done deal. The Build Back Better plan is not completely approved. What we're very supportive of is making sure that there's not a first mover disadvantage. But then I look at the other aspects of it, and I think it lines up with the administration's agenda.
Let me ask you a related question, and I'm sorry to harp on Tesla, but I know it's a company that you and others look at as, frankly...
I'd rather talk about GM,
no,
though.
I know, no, but I don't want to talk about Tesla in this regard, but I want to understand it.
All right, so real quick statement here. In the beginning, whenever he said that Tesla has 60-something% and they only have, 9-10% market share, and she goes on to say how we are the leaders. Listen, whenever in this interview, you can just see there where he's like, I know I keep talking about Tesla, and she's like, oh, I'd rather talk about GM. If you're the leader, nobody would continue to talk to you about another company. All right? Nobody, when it comes to Tesla, do they talk about GM or Ford. All right? Nobody who interviews Elon Musk talks about them. All right? We saw at CodeCon that Elon Musk never got asked about these other car companies. Like, it's because Tesla's Tesla. All right? They don't talk about these other companies. And so this is just one of those things that are just very obvious that GM is not a leader by any means. All right? And then and this is bad reporting on Andrew, in my opinion, whenever Elon tweeted the whole UAW, Ford makes their vehicles in Mexico, the legislation that was getting leaked out as far as the EV tax credit said that the unions would get a tax credit and there was no has to be made in the United States stipulation at that time. So context matters as to when he tweeted that, and I don't think that was provided here, so I just want to keep things fair and rational.
You've spent a lot of time with this new administration, and interestingly enough, they've had a number of meetings around EVs, and somewhat surprisingly, at least to some, Tesla has not been invited to those meetings. Do you know why that is?
I have no idea. I'm not in charge of the guest list.
But do you sit there and say this is a little strange, given the role that they played?
Andrew, I don't.
What do you mean you don't? How can you not think it's strange that with all of the EV meetings that you've had with the White House, that Tesla has never been invited and Tesla's never there? How can you not think that's strange? Like, this is where GM's going to go bankrupt. I'm sorry. They have a CEO who can't make a decision on anything, can't answer an interview question, can't even say the word Tesla, is scared to talk about it. Meanwhile, Herbert Diess, CEO of Volkswagen, we have Jim Farley, CEO of Ford, are both admitting, okay, we can't ignore Tesla. All right, we have to see what they're doing. We have to understand who they are, and we have to start, working at the same speed and rate of innovation as they are. I'm telling you, we're gonna see in a few years, GM is gonna be on the brink of bankruptcy again, and it's because of leaders like this. Spineless leaders who can't answer a question, who can't make a decision, who don't understand technology. This is why.
You really don't?
I don't give that a lot of thought. There's a lot of things I think about as it relates to competitors, but as I look at who's building the middle class, who has great opportunities, for a very talented workforce, that's not something I give a lot of thought to.
Okay, let me ask you then a different question, unrelated to policy, but really related to the vehicles and the infrastructure around the vehicles. Again, I'm going to mention Tesla, but you'll see where this is going. Tesla makes this deal with Hertz recently, or at least we think that there's a deal in place with Hertz.
I don't know what's true there.
We don't know what's true.
So she doesn't pay attention to the fact that she's at a meeting for EVs with the White House and Tesla's not there. Yeah, she pays attention to a deal with Hertz, and the only reason she knows that there may or may not be a deal is because Elon tweeted about that. So does that mean that she's just following Elon on Twitter? So she seems to care about that. She seems interested about that. That'd be interesting if she follows and watches Elon's Twitter.
But part of the reason that at least the stock market seemed to give them some more value was because they said that there's a lock-in effect. That if Hertz buys 100,000 of these vehicles, it's not just the vehicles, but it's the infrastructure and the supercharging stations that they're ultimately going to be buying as well, and that creates a long-term lock-in effect. And I'm curious how you think about that lock-in effect and whether you think that's real.
I don't know
and whether you need to be doing the same thing effectively.
Well, we already have announced at our investor day that we're investing over, $750 million in creating the infrastructure. Because we know that customers, they tell us, because we talk to customers all the time, and it's got to be a beautifully designed vehicle in the segment they want. It's got to have about 300 miles of range. But then they want to know that there's a trusted infrastructure. And so we're working with a number of startups. We're doing our own investment because we think people need to be able to charge at home, at work, and then on the road.
I'm going to take this opportunity to go ahead and talk about something that I'm passionate about. So first of all, GM's not building any superchargers themselves. They're just giving money to other companies. All right, that's all they're doing. And then they're going to try to aggregate all of them into their app and just have that be the interface you use. And the actual inner workings of the supercharging stations are all going to suck just like they do now, whereas Tesla is the most seamless thing, right? It's not even a question. I mean, just look at YouTube, look at the Porsches and the Volkswagens who are charging in the Netherlands in Tesla charging stations. They're blown away with how easy it is. So, once Tesla opens this up worldwide, it's just going to be a crazy machine of all Tesla supercharger stations out there. Not saying that other ones won't be made, but I'm telling you, it's not even going to be close, right? It's going to be a long time before anyone catches up to Tesla when it comes to charging stations. Now, what I think is a crazy easy opportunity that we're not seeing. Why don't we see something like grocery stores try to partner with Tesla and say, hey, we want to put a charging station, or we want every parking lot to have a charging station, right? So that when people are in the grocery store for 10, 20, 15 minutes, they can be charging. Why don't we see more places like Starbucks, places that want to retain people to stay there longer so they spend more, say, hey, let's put in all of our parking spots a charging station. That way we can, we incentivize people to stay there longer, right? If somebody stays there for 5 more minutes, maybe they buy another cup of coffee, or maybe, but people go there to work, to study. People spend a lot of time in these places. So I don't know why we don't see companies like Starbucks, or I live in Florida, so Publix, why we don't see these companies reach out to Tesla and try to make this business deal, saying, hey, it's a net win for all of us. Because I can tell you, a lot of people would choose a grocery store just because, hey, I can charge my Tesla while I'm there, right? I think the more we see this, the more, there could be some synergies with other companies, incentivize people to come, shop here, stay here longer. I think that's an untapped move that we haven't seen enough of yet.
And so we're looking to solve that solution for everyone. But I think ultimately having a charging infrastructure that's open to everyone is the way that we're going to accelerate EVs faster.
Do you think it's ever going to be seamless when it comes to these different stations that are going to be run by different companies across the country in the same way, again, I go back to Tesla, the way that's set up?
With what we're doing is, we're kind of almost, if you can think about it, the aggregator. It's go to my Chevy app and you select, and, we're working with all of these partners to make sure it's easy. It's, one-click payment, reservation, know it works. All of those things are going to be very important. So we're working to do that broadly.
We were talking to the Secretary of State earlier, and we were talking in particular about what's happening in Taiwan and semiconductors. This is having a huge impact on your business. Where are we right now?
So I think, we're seeing fourth quarter get better than third quarter. I think third quarter we were a bit disproportionately hit because of COVID in Malaysia. But as we move forward, we're seeing fourth quarter better. We have line of sight on 22. The second half of 22, I think, is going to be even better. And we see a very robust roadmap with all of our products coming out. We'll have a new truck capacity with new enhanced vehicles, trucks that are, have more featured, more models, Super Cruise, and they're more greenhouse gas efficient. Ridiculous.
More features, more models. That's just the wrong way of doing things. You need less buttons, less parts. You need less models. I just, the only reason I even put that clip in there is in case you were wondering about where things stand with chips, chip shortage. GM's obviously been hit by this very, very hard, even though they need less chips than any vehicle Tesla needs. But I thought it might be important for any of you viewers who are wondering what the situation is from another CEO's perspective. So take that what it's worth. But just to go back to what Andrew was saying, whether or not she thinks that with all these supercharging stations, if it'll ever be seamless with all these different companies and everything, she didn't really answer the question. I'll answer the question. It won't be. It just won't. It's not the same as going to like a Sunoco, a Shell, a BP. Like those, they all have the same pumps. They all work the same way, the same process, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure none of them make the pumps themselves, right? I'm sure there's another company that we don't know about that, I've never researched it. But what I liken this to is it's no different than Whether you have a AWS, an Azure, a GCP, they all work differently. Whether it's a Snapchat, a Instagram, a Facebook, or excuse me, a Meta, they all work differently. Whether you get into a Ford Mustang Mach-E, whether you get into a Chevy Bolt, whether you get into a Tesla, they all work differently. You're not going to pull up to all these supercharging stations and just have them all work the exact same way. It won't be the case. I mean, I can't even go to a parking meter and all parking meters work the same way. So, just a little bit of logic kind of, gives you, a rationale behind that. And I don't know why she couldn't say that. It's a pretty basic answer, but that's my thought. Let me know what you think.
So, we're working on that journey. And so I see 22 being a very strong year for us, a strong North America year at, what everybody focuses on, around 10% margins.
I hope she's right that North America is going to be very strong, especially with chips. And she says on the back half of 2022, mainly because by then, Austin and Berlin will definitely be open. They'll definitely be in production, and hopefully that production's ramping up. And by the way, she's hoping and very hopeful for a 10% margin. Well, Tesla's at 30% right now. So essentially, you need to make 3 vehicles to equate to 1 Tesla vehicle is what I'm hearing here.
Finally, I always like to ask you this question before we end. What car are you driving right now?
So right now I'm driving a Bolt EUV. I'm loving it. I think it's it really, when people get to drive an electric vehicle, I think they're going to find that they're not giving anything up. In fact, they're getting, and the customer experience is great. I have to admit, though, I'm waiting for my Hummer.
How many cars do you have? By the way, do you actually get to? Do you own them yourself, or do you just Well,
the EUV is I'm driving as part of the company, but I own a handful of cars as well. My husband and son are Camaro Firebird enthusiasts. We do own a Corvette as well. We'll soon own a Hummer, and I've got my name on the list with 200,000 other hand raisers for the Lyriq.
What number are you on the list?
Well, I try to be fair, so, but probably I think it's important for me to demonstrate our products. But, I signed up like everyone else for the Hummer.
Why can't she just answer that? What number are you on the list? Why is that such a hard question for her to answer? Say you're number 1. Who cares? You can literally say, I'm number 1. I'm the CEO. I need to make sure our product works before I put it in the hands of anyone else driving. Like, what a simple question to answer. This entire interview, she could not answer a single damn question. It is embarrassing.
I'm sure there's someone on the other end that says,
kept texting my the head of GMC Buick of the web, because we actually, when we started the Hummer, we actually overloaded the internet, and so I was texting him saying, but I managed to get on the list.
Did you hear that? She just said that they overloaded the internet. The CEO of GM, the CEO of the company who is going to lead in software for your car so that you can have those subscriptions for your firmware updates. The CEO who is going to be the leader of electric vehicles and overtake the likes of Tesla. The CEO who is going to be the leader when it comes to autonomous vehicles and whose current autonomous vehicle technology is the best according to a third-party outlet that never tested Tesla. Let's not forget about that. She just said that registrations for the Hummer, which is only 200,000 registrations apparently at this point, which happened over time, not in one day, broke the internet. The internet was broken. This is wild to me. She clearly does not understand how the internet works. She doesn't understand how software works. She doesn't understand anything engineering-wise. She is nothing more than a figurehead. She's a figurehead on top of GM, and all she's there for is to collect the paycheck. That's it. To collect the paycheck, to do the White House bidding, to make sure that they use union workers. It's embarrassing. Listen to this again.
We actually overloaded the internet, and so I was texting him saying, but I managed to get on the list.
Oh my goodness, overloaded the internet. I don't think she understands how that worked. Yeah, the whole internet went down just because of GM. This is wild. All right, well, I know this is a long video. I appreciate if you stuck to the end. Lots of comments. I told you it was going to be a longer one, but I thought there's some good stuff here. If nothing else, even if you don't agree with my comments and my rants and you agree with everything she said, or even if you don't agree with what she said, it's just good to hear where other companies are. Again, the point of this channel is to be investing against the grain. And sadly, most people don't look at the competitors of the companies they're invested in. And so I think that is investing against the grain, to take a deeper look and make sure we're paying attention to what the competition is doing, to make sure that we still believe in the thesis of where we're invested in. In my case, I'm all in with Tesla. That's what we've decided to do as a household. It just panned out for us very well. But so we want to make sure that we take a look at companies like GM and Ford and Rivian and Lucid, etc. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. I hope you guys enjoy your Monday. I hope you have a great week. It's last week before Thanksgiving for those of you here stateside. So one more week, let's grind it out, and then we'll get a little holiday break, but you'll still get episodes from me either way. All right, we're going to leave it there. See you guys on Wednesday. I love you all. Peace.